Hello children, welcome to my class. So this is class 2 on Thomas Mann's Death in Venice. I am going to give the outline of the story. Kindly listen to the class. So we have already started this novella. So this is actually class 2. So Aschenbach in Venice, he reaches Venice. So in Venice, after reaching the place, he checks in at a hotel. After having dinner at the hotel, he goes down to wait in the parlor until dinner. So the hotel guests are an international mixer, and at a nearby table, Aschenbach notices 3 adolescent girls and a boy. They all, speaking Polish and accompanied by a governess. So the boy appears to be around 14, and Aschenbach finds him entirely beautiful. This is the word that is actually used in the text. Usually we use only handsome with boys, but Aschenbach, after meeting the Polish boy, he finds him entirely beautiful with his golden ringlets, a divine serenity, a countenance suggest of Greek sculpture. And the boy was dressed in blue sailor suit. So I am sharing here the picture of the family, Tadzio's family. So as I said, 3 adolescent girls and a 14-year-old boy. This is their governance. So the boy's aristocratic clothes and jewelry, all these suggest that the family possesses great wealth. So the next morning, Aschenbach finds the weather still overcast and the air heavy, which makes him to recall his previous visit to Venice, during which similar weather had caused him to fall ill and forced him to return home. He wonders whether this trip will end the same way. At breakfast, again Aschenbach sees the Polish boy. He is again startled by the boy's godlike beauty. Aschenbach actually he mentally compares the boy to Eros, the Greek god of love. So Aschenbach spends the morning on the hotel's beach, delighting in spectacle of carefree and playful vacationers. And after some time, he takes out his traveling writing case and begins to work, but soon tosses it aside because he does not want to miss the diversions of the scene before him. That is, the Polish boy Tadzio is playing with his playmates, and he doesn't want to miss that scene. So eating some ripe strawberries from a passing vendor, he watches the boy play with the other children. So listening for what the boy's name might be, because he wants to know the name of the boy. He did not know the name, and he wants to know the name of the boy. So Aschenbach makes out unclear syllables like, Adigo or Adigu. And he finally decides the name must be Tadzio. So this is how we come to know that the Polish boy's name is Tadzio, Tadzio. I have given here, so Tadzio. So Aschenbach returned to his room at midday and gazes in the mirror at his aging features. So we all know that he is aging now. So he gazes at the mirror, at his aging features. Next day, while walking through the streets, so this is actually part 1. Yes, this is the one which I am narrating now. So please listen. So as I said, next day, while walking through the streets, Aschenbach finds a suffocating sultriness pervading the air caused by the hot wind. And he feels a feverish excitement and knows that his own health is in danger. So he decides to leave Venice because the weather is not pleasant. And he notifies his decision to the hotel that he is going to leave. So the next morning at breakfast, the porter comes to tell Aschenbach that the hotel's private transportation is leaving soon for the station. So Aschenbach, he wished to meet the boy before he leaves, but he was hurried by the porter that the coach may leave within minutes. So he has to leave the place without meeting the boy, and finally, as he raises to leave, Tadzio enters, and Aschenbach feels acute regret as he crosses the lagoon to the station. And he arrives and still he is undecided whether to take the train or not. So after arriving at the station, he learns that Aschenbach's luggage was mistakenly checked for another place. So that forced him to stay in the hotel or in Venice until he can regain the luggage. So Aschenbach now he returns to the hotel completely filled with joy, because he was so sad that he has to leave the place without meeting the boy. But now, since his luggage was wrongly checked for another place, he has to come back, he has to return to the place until he can regain the luggage. So he was so happy that he can be with the boy at least for a few more days. He relaxed in the room that afternoon. Aschenbach then sights Tadzio through the window and realizes that the boy has been the reason for his reluctance to leave Venice. So, if you see, Aschenbach's interest initially in the boy Tadzio is something he himself does not understand. But from the very beginning, Tadzio represents pure artistic beauty. At first, Aschenbach believes that he can admire this beauty passionately from a purely intellectual aesthetic standpoint. But later he tries to convince himself that he desires the boy only as an inspiration for more of his principled, dignified writing. But if you see, by the end of the novella, however, Aschenbach he himself will admit that beauty and art as represented by Tadzio are corrupting. So this is what we learn from him at the end of the novella. And coming back to the story, so Aschenbach decides to stay in Venice because his luggage is wrongly checked for another place. And he continues to see Tadzio constantly, occasionally inside the hotel and around the city, and always for hours each day on the beach. And this routine brings meaning to Aschenbach's life. He worshipfully studies the most intimate details of Tadzio's physique and movements. He feels he is gazing at beauty incarnate. So a vision comes to him of Socrates wooing Phaedrus beneath a tree in Athens. It is a Socrates teaching Phaedrus about desire and virtue. So this vision comes to Aschenbach's mind. So in that vision, the elderly, ugly Socrates tells the young and beautiful Phaedrus that beauty is the only form of the spiritual that may be perceived by the senses, and is thus the lover's path to the spirit. So he has this vision. We do not know the reason for the vision, and he compares himself to Socrates, the elderly Socrates, and the boy to Phaedrus. So Phaedrus is actually a work written by Plato. In that work, Socrates, an elderly ugly man, will try to seduce young beautiful boy Phaedrus. And suddenly this vision comes to Aschenbach. So Plato's protagonist are Socrates and Phaedrus. And next, Aschenbach decides to write because the purpose of his travel or journey, his visit to Venice itself, is to complete his work. And he started to write. He thought that he is going to express his views on a particular important cultural problem. The cultural problem is a question of taste, and that came to his mind, and he started to write. He decides to complete his work in Tadzio's presence, using the boy's body as a model and inspiration. But as he works, he experiences a joy of the word more acute than he has ever felt. So after he completes his work, he is exhausted and full of an ashamed sense of having indulged in some transgression. This is the feel that he had after completing his works, because he is a disciplined writer. So the next day, Aschenbach follows the boy down to the sea with the idea of making his acquaintance. So he wanted to lay his hands upon his shoulder, but he couldn't. He failed in that attempt. He turns back embarrassed. So we are told that Aschenbach is no longer able to control his desires, longs, maybe for the boy. So he becomes incapable of self-criticism, and that he is unable to analyze for himself whether conscience or weakness prevented him from speaking to the boy. He doesn't know. And the next part, if you see, Aschenbach realizes that Tatsuo has become aware of his admiration, and this actually adds to his joy. So Tatsuo seems to walk past Aschenbach's bathing cabin purposefully, and the eyes of the two often meet. So these things tells us that the boy is also interested in the man. So Aschenbach feels a smile to be a fateful gift, feeling delirious and overwhelmed. And the next scene, so this is the second part of the novella. So we are moving on to the second part, second section, next issue. See, Aschenbach, he notices that even as the height of the season approaches, the number of guests as the hotel at the hotel dwindles. So the hotel barber lets slip in conversation a remark about the sickness. So once when he went to a saloon, and the barber by the slip of a tongue, he just made a remark about the sickness. And when Aschenbach interrogated the saloon, he tried to change the subject. And Aschenbach could see, or he could notice, posters warning residents not to eat fish or produce or use water from the canals. So the only printed information about possible epidemics is in the form of contradictory rumors in the German newspapers. So he was confused. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what is happening around him. Aschenbach was confused. So all the speakers of Aschenbach's mother tongue have left, and he is surrounded by foreign languages. And now he could sense that something danger or something wrong is happening around him. But still, he doesn't want to leave the place because he wants to be with the boy Tatsuo. While the thought of serious danger at first makes Aschenbach nervous, but soon he realizes with a kind of horror that if Tatsuo is going to leave, Aschenbach would not be able to go on living, and he thinks that an epidemic leading to a quarantine. So I believe you are familiar with all these words now. So those days they had this quarantine. So he thought that if this epidemic is going to lead to a quarantine, and that would guarantee that Tatsuo and his family would have to stay on in Venice. So he was happy of this epidemic. They broke out of epidemic because even if the family is going to be quarantined, they will be there at least for some more days. So he is happy, and so he decides not to miss the chance of seeing the boy, and he didn't even warn the family that an epidemic has broke out. So he becomes fully obsessed, completely obsessed. And at times, however, Aschenbach questions what is happening to him. With shame, he compares his artistic life with that of his dignified, manly ancestors. Yet he also tries to protect his dignity by convincing himself that art too is a manly battle. So he considers that it is a battle between the two, pleasure and the dignified life or the strict life. Also, he is doubtful about the city, and he persists in researching the progress of the spreading disease. And when he asks various Venetians why the city is being disinfected, the answer that they gave is it's only a precautionary measure. They didn't reveal, because the tourist was the main industry, financial industry, economic industry for the country. So they don't want to scare the tourists. They don't want to reveal the truth to the tourists that a disease has broke out. And one evening, while Aschenbach was enjoying a group of street musicians, they gave a performance in the hotel's front garden. Aschenbach sits on the terrace sipping pomegranate juice and soda water. He enjoys the singing and the clownish antics because the narrator says passion paralyzes discrimination. So Aschenbach notices that he thinks of bacteria side. So Aschenbach asked a guitarist in an